The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Hartford Industries' executive boardroom, casting long shadows across the polished mahogany table. Around it sat the city's most powerful business leaders, their expensive suits, and confident demeanors masking the growing panic that had gripped them all week. The water crisis had begun slowly, then escalated rapidly. 3 neighborhoods in the city's industrial district had been without clean water for 5 days. The municipal engineers were baffled, the environmental consultants were stumped, and the media was asking increasingly difficult questions. Victoria Hartford, CEO of Hartford Industries and daughter of the company's founder, sat at the head of the table, her elegant mint green dress a stark contrast to the grim expressions surrounding her. At 35, she had inherited not just her father's company, but his reputation for getting results when others failed. "Gentlemen," Victoria said, her voice carrying the weight of responsibility, "we've tried everything our consultants suggested. The backup water treatment facility is still producing contaminated water, and we have thousands of families depending on us for a solution." Richard Blackwell, the arrogant head of the city's engineering consortium, leaned back in his chair with a dismissive wave. "It's a complex hydraulic issue, Ms. Hartford. These things take time. We can't expect miracles." As the meeting continued with more excuses and finger-pointing, the boardroom door quietly opened. Marcus Rivera, the building's maintenance supervisor, entered with his cleaning cart. At 42, Marcus had worked at Hartford Industries for 8 years, arriving each morning at dawn to ensure the building was spotless before the executives arrived. Marcus had always been invisible to most of the people in power. He wore his simple blue work shirt and carried his tools with the quiet dignity of a man who took pride in honest work. What none of them knew was that Marcus held a degree in environmental engineering from the State University, a degree he'd earned while working nights to support his elderly mother and younger sister. When the economic downturn hit 12 years ago, engineering jobs had disappeared and Marcus had taken whatever work he could find. By the time the economy recovered, he'd become comfortable in his quiet routine, content to support his family and read technical journals in his spare time. But as Marcus went about his work, emptying wastebaskets and wiping down surfaces, he couldn't help but overhear the conversation. The description of the water contamination problem made his pulse quicken. He recognized the symptoms immediately. He'd studied similar cases in graduate school. The backup filtration system is producing the same contaminated results, one consultant was explaining. "We've replaced the primary filters, checked all the chemical balances." Marcus paused in his work, his trained mind automatically analyzing the problem. The solution was actually quite straightforward, but he could see these highly paid experts were looking in entirely the wrong direction. Richard Blackwell noticed Marcus lingering near the table and stood up abruptly, his face flushing with irritation. "Excuse me, maintenance man, but this is a private meeting. Can't your cleaning wait?" Marcus respectfully stepped back. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just finishing—" "Well, finish somewhere else," Blackwell snapped. "We're dealing with complex engineering problems here, not something you'd understand." Victoria looked uncomfortable with Blackwell's rudeness, but said nothing. She'd always made an effort to treat all employees with respect, though she realized she barely knew the quiet man who kept their building immaculate. Marcus nodded politely and began to move toward the door, but something made him stop. Perhaps it was thinking about Mrs. Chen, the elderly woman in his neighborhood who'd been carrying water jugs up 3 flights of stairs because her building's supply was contaminated. Perhaps it was remembering the young mother he'd seen struggling with her baby's formula using bottled water. "Excuse me," Marcus said quietly, turning back toward the table. "I couldn't help but overhear about the water treatment facility." Blackwell's face turned red. "Are you serious right now? We don't need cleaning tips on water management." A few of the board members chuckled, and Marcus felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. But Victoria raised her hand for quiet, something in Marcus's calm demeanor catching her attention. "What about the water treatment facility?" she asked gently. Marcus took a deep breath. Well, from what I heard about the symptoms, the specific type of contamination continuing even after filter replacement, it sounds like you might have a reverse osmosis membrane issue combined with a pH imbalance in the pre-treatment stage. The room fell silent. Blackwell stared at Marcus with a mixture of shock and indignation. I'm sorry. Did our janitor just try to diagnose a multi-million-dollar engineering problem? Blackwell said sarcastically. He turned to Marcus with a condescending smile. Okay, maintenance man. If you're so smart, why don't you tell us exactly how to fix it? Right now. Solve what our team of experts can't figure out. The challenge hung in the air like a dare. Marcus felt every eye in the room on him, and for a moment, he almost retreated to his cart and his quiet invisibility. But then he thought about Mrs. Chen again, about all the families going without clean water while these men played politics and protected their egos. The issue isn't with your primary treatment system, Marcus said, his voice growing stronger. When you replaced the filters but kept getting the same contamination, that should have told you the problem was upstream. You need to check the pre-treatment. Settling tanks. Specifically, look for a pH imbalance that's preventing proper flocculation. When particles don't clump correctly in the settling stage, they pass through to the filtration system as colloidal particles too small for standard filtration. The room was completely quiet now. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Marcus with growing interest. The contamination you're seeing, Marcus continued, especially if it includes metallic traces, suggests the pH is too low, probably around 5.5 or 6. You need to raise it to 7.27.8 for proper particle settling. Add lime or sodium hydroxide to the pre-treatment tanks, give it 6 hours to cycle through, and your filtration system should start producing clean water. Blackwell's mouth was hanging open. How do you know? I have a degree in environmental engineering from State University, Marcus said simply. I specialized in water treatment systems. Victoria stood up slowly, her mind racing. Marcus, is it? How long have you known about this solution? Since about 10 minutes into your meeting, ma'am. But I didn't think it was my place. Your place? Victoria's voice carried a note of amazement. Marcus, if you're right about this, you could be solving a crisis that's affecting thousands of people. She turned to her assistant. Get me the head of the municipal water department on the phone, now. Within 2 hours, Marcus found himself standing in the water treatment facility, wearing a borrowed hard hat and explaining his diagnosis to a team of incredulous city engineers. Victoria stood beside him, watching with growing respect as her maintenance supervisor calmly pointed out problems that had eluded their expensive consultants. There, Marcus said, pointing to a gauge. See how the pH reading is 5.8? That's your problem right there. Your particles aren't settling properly because the water chemistry is wrong. The chief city engineer, a woman named Dr. Sarah Martinez, ran the tests Marcus suggested. Her eyes widened as the readings confirmed his analysis. He's absolutely right, she announced. How did we miss this? By evening, lime had been added to the pre-treatment tanks. By the next morning, the water running through the treatment facility was crystal clear and completely safe. The local news picked up the story quickly. City's water crisis solved by building maintenance worker. But it was Victoria who insisted on holding a proper press conference. Standing in the same boardroom where he'd been dismissed as just a janitor, Marcus found himself facing reporters and cameras. Victoria stood beside him, her hand resting supportively on his shoulder. Marcus Rivera, she announced to the gathered media, has just been promoted to Director of Environmental Solutions for Hartford Industries. His quick thinking and expertise have solved a crisis that stumped our highest-paid consultants. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Rivera, how does it feel to go from janitor to executive in one day? Marcus thought carefully before answering. I was never just a janitor, he said with quiet dignity. I was always an engineer who happened to work in maintenance. Sometimes we don't see the value in people because we're looking at their uniforms instead of their minds. Later, after the reporters had left and the boardroom was empty except for Victoria and Marcus, she turned to him with genuine curiosity. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone about your education? Why didn't you apply for an engineering position?" Marcus smiled gently. "Sometimes life takes you on paths you didn't plan. I started cleaning buildings to support my family, and I found honor in that work. I was needed, I was useful, and I was taking care of the people I loved. That felt like enough. But you had so much more to offer." "I offered what I could, when I could," Marcus replied. "Today, the city needed an engineer. Yesterday, your building needed someone to keep it clean and safe. Both jobs matter, Ms. Hartford. The difference is just in when you need which skill." Victoria extended her hand to Marcus, but not in the formal way she usually shook hands with executives. This was the warm, genuine clasp of someone who had learned an important lesson. "Thank you, Marcus. Not just for solving the water crisis, but for reminding us all that wisdom and worth aren't determined by titles or appearances. They're determined by character and knowledge, regardless of where we find them." As Marcus walked out of the boardroom that evening, no longer as a janitor but as the newest member of Hartford Industries' executive team, he carried with him the satisfaction of knowing that sometimes the most important contributions come from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the person everyone underestimates is exactly the person everyone needs.